Well, we're nerds over here. We like
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
at
yeah. No, that's true. So
it.
Mills, I'm curious, Mills, do most of your clients, are they interested in what you would call more like personal finance help or investing help, or a mix between the two? Do you kind of in your own head maybe just blend the two definitions as one?
So I really like to say that I'm step one, and I view investing as step one and a half, right?
Sure,
You
sure. Okay.
can't run until you walk, but
Hmm.
working with mostly entrepreneurs and other variable income earners, what they're struggling with the most is being able to make enough money and then being able to make whatever money they do make stretch, right?
Okay.
So think of a realtor, for example. If they get a huge commission check, most of the time their first instinct is to celebrate and splurge
Mm.
that commission check,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Okay.
On the entrepreneur side, if somebody is actually running a business and they have their separate business expenses, but everything is still intermixed between business and personal, it's really difficult for them to get organized too. So the first thing I do is actually identify their money mindset. I figure out where they currently stand with money, their perceptions of it, how they get in their own way, ways that
Hmm.
they can make it easier based off of their personality. And then we start with budgeting. We work backwards, we identify what they need to be earning, put that in tangible metrics. So they're not earning $200,000 a year, it's instead closing 2 clients a month,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And then we build upon that and say, once you have that consistently down, this is where you get to invest your money. This is why it's important. This is, compound interest versus the credit card that's charging you 25% and all those different factors. So it's more of the information gathering, bringing it all together, and then creating a plan that they can run with. I like to say you use me and lose me.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. I like that. And it's
Thanks.
funny because so you start with the money mindset and then you
Mm-hmm.
kind of go into putting a budget together. And
Mm-hmm.
the other day, just this past week, I was, lucky enough that my alma mater here, University of Rochester, invited me to give a course to a subset of students on personal finance and
How
investing. So
fun.
I had to put some charts together and think about, okay, what do I present on? What don't I present on? But my first section, I think there were 6 sections in the presentation, about 10
Mm-hmm.
minutes each. The first one was psychology and money. It was
Yes.
basically money mindset and kind of how to think about money and
Yes.
how to think about happiness and money and all those things intertwined. And then
Mm-hmm.
section 2, I call it section 2, step 0, budgeting, because I think
Yes.
basically I think
You
that's
have
where you
to.
need to start.
Yeah.
You can't manage what you don't measure is one of my favorite quotes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
And I just think you got to measure in some way. I tend to be very detailed about my budgeting. I'm probably way
Mm-hmm.
off on one end of the spectrum. And I don't think everybody needs to be there. But
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people's answer is basically do nothing
Right.
and hope it all works out. And I don't think you want to be there either.
No, no. If you take the time to be detailed, just the one time that you set your budget, and then
Hmm.
you automate it as much as you possibly can through paying bills on auto pay, having automatic account transfers, or your directly deposited paycheck split, or whatever it may be, then it's working for you, right?
Right.
You do the work the one time, you dedicate the 3 hours or so to sit down, set your budget, have the systems in place to automate it. And then you don't have to really revisit it until something in your finances change.
Gotcha.
But,
Gotcha.
like you and I, we love sitting down and looking
Yeah.
at it with a
Yeah,
magnifying
that's true.
glass and
Yeah. Yeah.
being granular. Um, but yeah, you gotta work smarter, not
Hmm.
harder when it
Hmm.
comes to your finances.
Do you, with your clients, usually, do you recommend or advise that they not only do they kind of budget to plan their dollars ahead of time, do you
Mhm.
recommend that they also track their spending kind of as time goes along so they can
Absolutely.
compare their actual spending data against what they had budgeted?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
One of my first clients, I won't mention his name, but he often would spend about $900 a month on dining out,
Mm-hmm.
not to mention groceries.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's what he was spending, he thought, well, that's what I need to budget for.
Gotcha.
That's not true.
Yeah.
I asked him something, do you want to spend that money on dining out each month? And he said, no, I'd rather put most of that money toward a down payment on a home. So it's again, going back to that mindset shift of that's not my priority, this is my priority instead, and then tracking how you're actually spending it moving forward. Dining
Right.
out is a financial kryptonite for many, many people. And it's just a matter of sitting down and asking yourself, is it worth this dollar amount right now? Is it worth foregoing this financial goal instead?
Right.
Also keeping track. Am I being within the boundaries that I've
Right.
set for myself? You
Totally.
know?
Totally. And it's a hard one, you know. I get it. I've got a friend who I was speaking to the other night who I mean, he is a very social person and he just loves socializing. And I think he wants to be in the situation where basically when a friend invites him to do something, he just wants to say yes. And who can blame him
Mhm.
for that? But when we kind of
Mhm.
started talking about money and we realized that his biggest spending categories, or at least the biggest spending categories that kind of took him off guard, that surprised
Mhm.
him when he looked at the nitty gritty numbers, were dining out, nights out, so like, you know,
Mhm.
bars
Clubs, yeah.
and clubs and just kind of like weekend getaways. Like, oh,
Mm.
but you know, we're kind of at that age where a bachelor party here, a bachelor party there, or just hey
Mhm.
everybody, you know, we decided we're gonna split an Airbnb up by the lake this weekend. Just those kind of things.
Yeah,
And of course, we want to all go have fun, but budgeting and tracking does let you put at least some limits, some safeguards on your own
absolutely.
spending where you can
Mhm.
spend freely within those limits and feel really good about it. And then
Mhm.
you come up against that limit and you're like, okay, that's it for the month, no more.
It's also it's also the opportunity for you to plan ahead too.
Hmm.
If you know that you want to have one weekend away every month and it's going to cost you, $500 a weekend on average, you know that you need to set aside that money in the future. If you don't happen to use it, well, then it's still being accumulated. And then maybe you have a week long trip in a few months
Right.
instead.
Right. Yeah.
So it's paying your future self for those other areas of your life, whether you incurred that expense truly that month or not as
Right.
well.
Yeah. Do you know, are you familiar with Paula Pant? Do you
I'm
recognize
not.
that name? So
No.
Paula, she runs a pretty popular personal finance and investing related
Okay.
podcast. It's called the Afford Anything podcast,
Okay.
and her tagline that she's been using, I think since day one, and it's like more than a decade old at this point, is you can afford anything, you just can't afford everything.
Ooh,
And so when it comes to budgeting
that's
like
so
that,
true.
right? So it's like if you want to go on a one weekend
Yeah.
getaway every month, yeah, you can afford that. You've got a budget for it. Put
Mm-hmm.
$500 aside every month, like you just said, Mills. But
Mm-hmm.
it's going to come at the cost of something else. You can't afford everything. So you have to make
Mm-hmm.
some cuts where you don't really care about stuff, trim the fat over
Mm-hmm.
here so that you can afford the fun, cool stuff in other parts of your budget.
Mm. If we were in church right now, Jesse, we'd be hearing some preach and amens
Amen.
and
Amen.
claps.
Yeah.
I love it.
A
I
lot of
love
hands
it.
in the air. A lot of hands in
Yes.
the air right now.
Trying to grab the
Um,
money. I love it.
but I mean, it is. These are all like, you know, great principles, and I think it's awesome that you're sharing them, Mills. And just like I don't want to repeat myself too much, but it is one of those things that we're probably at the point where sometimes we might even take it for granted because they're so
Yeah.
ingrained in our lives. And it's always just helpful to get those reminders from
Mm-hmm.
people in the community who we work with, who are like, oh, this is a completely new concept to you. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's explain the hows and the whys of it.
Absolutely.